Welcome to On the Porch, the podcast. Thanks for joining us. Georgia Ella Lyon is one of our most beloved writers. She has published in every genre of writing I can think of, but she is perhaps best known as a poet and a children's book author. She was born in Harlan County, but has lived in Lexington for many years. In 2015 and 2016, she served as the Poet Laureate of Kentucky and did a tremendous amount of work in that role. She's published dozens of books, and her poem, Where I'm From, has become a poetry prompt that has been used all over the world. Thanks so much for joining us here on the porch, Georgella.
I'm so glad to be here.
Well, you are a writer that so many of us look up to. Ever since I've known you, you have certainly been someone that I've looked to as an example of being a writer who really does the work and as someone who stands up for what she believes in. So I'm very thankful to you for that. Among other things, you've been a real inspiration to me, and I know to many people listening, they'd say the same. With that said, I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about how you're keeping calm and positive through these unprecedented times.
Well, right now I'm holding a rock that says trust. I'm holding on through the spring, through this beautiful spring. It's been such a gift to be able to go outside and dig in the earth and see the trees and walk in the neighborhood and just feel the life renewing itself, the earth going on, and the hope that spring always brings us, and waving to neighbors, though we can't stop and talk, but that has kept me grounded. And of course, reading and writing. And then I have two writers groups, one of whom meets by Zoom. And, we go on working, and the other one just does some FaceTime to check in with each other. And I'm lucky that I'm sheltering in place with people I love and get along with,
Yes.
So I think that's it.
Yeah.
And knowing that people have gone on through all manner of unknowns and pressures, and so this is our turn.
Right. Yeah, I think one thing that I've thought so much about is people who are not sheltering in place with, or they are sheltering in place with people that they don't want to be stuck with, and how, or even people that it's dangerous to be stuck with. I have
That's right.
worried so much about that. And and often I'll say to people, ask, how are you doing? And I feel a little guilty because I feel like everything is going very well for me inside my own home, but then I turn on the news, or I think about somebody who's losing their business or their job, so it's just like this constant thing that's always there, isn't it?
It is, and we lost a good friend in Louisville to the virus.
Yes.
So that brought it out of any kind of out there,
Exactly.
to knowing the devastation of that family and the grief that we feel. It is also, it's a paradoxical situation that we feel guilty for feeling safe, but we're also really afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And we feel like time has stopped, but we also know it's racing by, and we don't know where it's going. It's a very confusing on all the levels of the psyche and the body, I think.
Yeah, the uncertainty is one of the things I think a lot about.
Well, yeah, because we use the phrase the foreseeable future, but
right.
Where did that go?
Yes. Well, what's been the biggest change for you during the pandemic? Are you able to to see everybody in your family the way you used to, or are there some people you're not able to? Or?
No, we can't. I mean, our son Joey and daughter-in-law Whitney and our granddaughter Mina, who are in Cincinnati, we can only see through FaceTime.
Yes.
Or Google Hangouts. And we haven't seen them since February. And Mina has grown by leaps and bounds and says, "Where is my umbrella?" All kinds of things, that she didn't. We're just missing.
Yes.
Being present. And it's wonderful that we have this way of connecting, but you just want to hug them.
Yeah. Right. So would you say that's probably been the hardest part for you, is just not being able to touch your grandchild? And
Yeah, not being able to be, we're in check, We have to check ourselves. We can't go forward if we see somebody, we can't go forward and embrace them, so it's that sense of holding back. But yeah, not being able to be with her is hard on a mama.
Right. Well, like I said, I am absolutely conscious of all the trouble and hurt in the world, but I have also been aware of real positives to the pandemic. You mentioned walking in the neighborhood, and I live in a neighborhood where, it's a great place to walk anyway, but particularly since the pandemic started, more people are outside. They're walking, they're dancing outside, there are people playing cellos on the front porch, and it just seems like people can only take so much of being on screens, and they have to get outside. So I think people are getting outside more. I also think about the waters clearing in the canals of Venice.
Oh, yeah. And the drop in
air pollution.
It's huge.
Right.
And we see how quickly the earth recovers or starts to recover from how we live.
Yes.
And so I think if we can take from this some turnarounds in the way we live, it could be a huge gift. But there are all the people who have no economic base, and they don't know what's going to happen. And that's another privilege I have, that for the time being, I'm not. I mean, I could go wander into next year and be panicked, but
right.
there's enough here, so I'm not going to do that.
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm privileged.
But at the same time, as a full-time writer, it's always sort of a juggling act to some degree, isn't it? And you are one of the handful of writers I know who has made a living for years and years as a full-time writer, and that is quite a feat. And so, I mean, a lot of your income, I imagine, is doing events, going to schools, things like that.
Yeah, and all of that, of course, is canceled unless they can try to do it virtually. And so I usually do a bunch of teacher institutes in the summertime, and they're trying to see, if they can do that.
Right.
So, but yeah, and of course, Steve, my husband's a musician, so all that shut down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
so.
Now, I know that you wrote this poem, "The Meadow Doesn't Know About the Stock Market," years ago. I think it was about 11 years ago. Is that right?
It was in 2008, so it'll be 12 years in the fall.
But I've seen it pop up on social media a few times during all this. I think that there's something in that poem that really is speaking to people during the quarantine, and as we're thinking about all the things we've just been talking about. And also, it's just a poem of another poem of yours that's become a balm for people. So I wondered if you would read that to us before we talk about it.
Oh, I'd be happy to. The meadow does not know about the stock market. Today she is worth exactly what she was worth yesterday, a year ago, at creation. I don't mean property value, taxable assets. I mean milkweed and copper moths, honeybees, cowbitch, king snakes. Meadow life is not money. What rises and falls here are stems and flowers, leaves and fruit. No zigzag line of profit and panic, but the great wheel turning. Here God gives of her extravagance, and here, like flicker, viceroy, dragonfly, we come into our inheritance.
Thank you. How did that poem come into being?
Well, I was at the Mary Anderson Center back when it was a retreat for writers and artists just over the river in Indiana from Louisville. And it was when the crash of 2008 was happening, and all the housing bubble and the bad loans and all those things were being revealed. But because I was there and I had the woods to wander and these meadows full of fall flowers, Joe Pye and ironweed and just late asters, and just so beautiful. And I would leave my desk and go out to walk, and I would leave feeling all clenched up, and by the time I was halfway through that meadow, I just gave it up, because it was so wonderful. It was so alive and flourishing and delicious. And so it occurred to me that the meadow does not know about the stock market. So, and so then, and also I was in that situation where there was no impediment to just writing something down immediately, which is a great thing. Then you can just follow it. So,
right.
So by the time I got back to my desk, I was ready to go with it. But I really have kept that meadow in my heart all these years, and it's a place I go when I'm stressed. I go back there in my spirit, and so I put it on Facebook because I thought, I just wanted to offer it if it might be helpful to somebody else. And after I did it, I thought, oh, that was really dumb. but I was astonished that people took hold of it, and it meant something, which is always so great to know that there's something useful you put out in the world.
Right. And a piece of music has been written that was inspired by the poem, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This composer, Elizabeth Alexander, has done a number of my poems, some as choral arrangements and some as a solo. And, of course, that was with piano and cello. I thought it was just gorgeous.
I love that. I love the act of ekphrasis, when one piece of art leads to another piece of art. That's really wonderful. Well, a lot of people have been telling me that they've been struggling to focus through the pandemic, especially some writers. But I know that you journal every day. Is that right?
Pretty much. And I think like everybody, like everybody who writes, I feel like, oh, I suddenly have all this time. Why am I, shouldn't I be more productive than I'm being? But I'm very consoled by the being able to turn to writing and to reading.
Yes.
But yeah, and I go back to journals, older journals, and find things that I wrote and never typed up because I didn't get them at the time.
Mm.
You know how sometimes you write something and it's sort of ahead of you,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't recognize it. So that on days when I haven't been able to find a new thread, I've gone back and found some things. I found just this morning. I found a poem. I revised it, but it was from 1984.
Wow.
It was something an exchange with my 4-year-old. So, you want to hear it?
Sure.
Called About That Job. 4 years old and hearing me talk at the dinner table about the lack of jobs for a poet. 4 years old and asking why we have to have money each day. I point to the food. 4 years old and trying to solve this old dilemma. I know what to do, he says. Make us a poem pie and we'll eat that.
That's great.
And I would have lost that if I hadn't written it down.
Is there a particular poem that you turn to in times of upset? It's a poem that calms you?
Oh, yes. One of the poems is Philip Booth's poem, First Lesson, about a daughter whose father's teaching her to swim.
Mm.
And it ends, he's telling her that she's safe and she can trust the water. And it ends, I lie gently and wide to the light your stars. Lie back and the sea will hold you.
Mm. I'll have to look up that whole poem.
Yeah, it's powerful. And I went back and reread Ellen Bryant Boat's book Kyrie, poems about the flu
Mm-hmm.
In 1918. And at first I thought, I can't, I wanted to look at it, but then I thought, I don't want to read this because, we've got enough trouble. But I found it too compelling to put down, to see what she made of it. And I don't know if you've read that, but it's a sequence of poems that follow a soldier and a teacher, and they're engaged, and there are letters between them, and as well as all these other poems that are going on about what's happening in the world and in the community that he's from. But and they're all sonnets.
What's the title again?
Kyrie.
And who's it by?
Ellen Bryant Boat.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love her work. Well,
But it helps. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I know you have a new book coming out, so I was wondering if you'd tell us about that. When does it come out?
It comes out in October the 13th, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called Voices of Justice, poems about people working for a better world. And it's for sort of middle school age, upper elementary, middle school age. I think it's really for anybody who likes poems, but, they have to know where to put it in the libraries.
Is it about contemporary people, or does it cover a span of time?
It covers a span of time. I think the farthest back would be Jane Addams, and the most contemporary, Greta Thunberg, and an environmental activist named Shusakot Martinez, who gave his first speech about climate justice when he was 6 years old.
Wow.
And then the very last poem is addressed to the reader as a the next wave of activists, you know.
Great.
And it's illustrated by Jennifer Potter, and she did such an incredible job. And even though it was supposed to be illustration on the left, poem on the right, and my poems wouldn't stay where they were supposed to. They, you know, like one of them, each stanza is on a separate picket sign.
Uh-huh.
So she was flexible, and she just opened up. She opened up the possibilities by, and so now the illustrations and the poems are really integral to one another.
Mm. You're listening to WUKY 91.3 FM. We are talking to Georgia Ella Lyon. Well, we've talked about reading and writing and walking. All of those things are carrying me through. I think animals are really helping a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Dogs and cats and horses or whatever your animal of choice is. But the other thing that is always a balm for me, but particularly in hard times, is music. And I know you're a musician and a great music lover. So I just wondered if you could narrow down a couple of your favorite songs to tell us about.
Oh, my goodness.
I know it's a hard question.
Well, just this morning I was singing Caroline Herring's When I Lay My Burden Down.
Yes.
And the line about when I lay my burden down could be tomorrow, God has not told me. You know, there we are. And yet it has that great presence of, but for now,
mm-hmm.
I will love with all the faith that is within me. I don't think faith is the right word, but so it chooses to love in all the capacities that a person has to love. And so for me, it's a celebratory song.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been really with me. But a lot of John Prine, you know,
mm-hmm.
because he died in this time. And so when I found out he was sick, I began just listening.
Me too.
So much to him, and then that got me listening to Iris DeMint,
mm-hmm.
and that's been really rich.
Well, Georgella, again, I can't thank you enough for all you do for the arts, for the environment, for social justice, for the Commonwealth. It's an honor to call you a friend, so thank you for joining us today.
Well, same to you, Silas.
Thanks for listening to the podcast of On the Porch. I'm your host, Silas House. This episode was engineered and produced by DeBron Thomas at the studios of WUKY 91.3 FM in Lexington, Kentucky. We are listener-supported radio, and we thank you for joining us.